From a UX standpoint, our job is to make journeys as frictionless as possible, as easy as possible. Traditional e-commerce wisdom says, reduce the friction, make it as easy as possible, optimize impulse decisions, get them in quick, and we're doing the exact opposite. Where friction can be purposeful, it serves critical value.
How do you kind of keep the team engaged? How do you keep them motivated? How do you keep them kind of moving forward with the digital product in a large organization?
All right, what a great question. So I think
today on the podcast, we're talking to Alanna Broderick Walker. Alanna is Director of Digital Product for Community Tennis with the United States Tennis Association, or the USTA. She brings a wealth of experience with digital products, and she's happy to share that with us today. We'll be talking to her about the importance of user testing in the product development process and how that can really be used as an effective tool to make sure you're delivering an impactful, not opinion-based digital product. We're going to talk about the importance of purposeful friction and how that can be used effectively to help drive more value in digital products. And we'll also be talking about the importance of leading strategically, how doing that can really help to keep teams aligned and keep them motivated and engaged. We're happy to have Alanna with us today. Let's get started. Alanna, thank you so much for being on the podcast today. We're very, very happy to have you with us.
Hi, Shamir. I'm so glad to be here. Thank you for having me.
You know, it's exciting to talk to someone in the field of athletics and sports because we know how fast moving that can be. All the different events, in your case, the different tournaments you have to deal with. I know you're still pretty fresh off the US Open, which I'm sure was a super busy time for you and for the organization. So we appreciate you kind of buying out the time and giving us kind of a behind the curtain look into the world of digital product for a large athletic organization like USTA. So thinking about that and thinking about digital product for you guys, I know just like any other organization, you guys are really trying to create that impactful digital experience for your members and prospective members. And that means doing things that perhaps the organization hasn't done before. And I know in talking to you previously, one of those things that's relatively newer is user testing and really incorporating that into your process to help improve the kind of experience that you're ultimately delivering to the members on the website. So with that in mind, how has that shift been? How has it been starting to incorporate user testing into what you're doing?
Yeah, no, great question. So obviously working at USTA, there are quite a few clients or stakeholders that we service on the digital side. And those requests are plentiful. And usually if a stakeholder or client requests something, it's usually based on an opinion. It's based on, what they experienced. And unfortunately, a lot of the time, it's an assumption. Or if one person has complained to them, they feel to escalate this. So for us, a huge shift is now having the privilege of having our own internal UX and design team. So number one is resources to actually be able to do this is for the first step, and to be able to do it quickly. So instead of making an assumption or if a feedback comes in or a complaint comes in, we can take a step back. Instead of being reactive and immediately trying to fix the problem, we first want to establish if there is actually a problem. So like an example for us, I would say like a good one to share with you guys is 2 years ago, we completely changed our navigation, which was a big change. It didn't do it for over 5-6 years. So it was a big change. And of course, feedback came in from a few high-level members that, it's complicated. I can't find what I'm looking for. And so, of course, the knee-jerk reaction is, oh, gosh, we have to change it. It's broken. It's not fixed. It's not working. Even though we did do work before implementing this, testing it with users, made sure that it was a frictionless journey. But because this feedback came in, we were able to actually go back to when it was live, do more usability tests, get more feedback, actually show that ease of use was there. People were finding the things that they were searching for, and being able to take this data back to our stakeholders and be able to say, actually, it is working. It's actually performing really well. And so being able to use user testing, being able to get feedback from more than just one person, it really helps in the assumption game and the knee-jerk reaction. So for us, that's kind of been, you know, the first step in almost any request we get or any change request is, all right, let's back up that assumption. Let's actually make the case that yes, it's not working well and we needs to get better. And then put the resources behind it to actually to fix it.
That's such a common problem, right? Not just obviously in USTA, but in so many organizations where we get a bit of tunnel vision, especially those on the business side. And you really think that the way that you see the world is the way everyone sees the world. And I suppose that's just human nature, right? I mean, we just assume that if it makes sense to us this way or doesn't, then that's the way it does or doesn't make sense to everyone else. So, you really illustrate there the power of user testing as part of kind of a larger framework of experimentation of saying, how do we justify what we're doing, not so much against ourselves internally by just looking in the mirror, but by looking at the outer world and saying, well, how are people actually interacting with this? And that can really help. And it seems like it has helped to be able to kind of alleviate or at least balance out to some degree opinion making decision as opposed to objective information and data being driven by the people who this is actually serving. Have you seen just personally, just kind of overall a positive response to now incorporating this into the process?
Absolutely. I think, actually people are trying to leverage it for other things outside of digital development. As simply as language, like what's resonating better with users, what, perceptions of colors as well. Like, been doing a few tests with A/B testing with different color usage and if that ignites more conversion. But I think it's starting to make sense. It's starting to, hey, thank you, starting that natural, it's becoming the norm that before you make a request, let's prove that it's first now working. Let's see if we can make it better, and let's get some feedback before we actually spend money on fixing something that might not be broke. So I think the money part is actually even better because we're not wasting resources and we're not taking capacity from the work that we should be doing for something that not necessarily is needed, especially when you're working with a small shop and your capacity and your resources are limited. Being able to put testing in the step before actually going into development, I think, is a huge win for smaller organizations or smaller digital teams.
No, 100%, right? Because I mean, the default kind of mode is kind of saying we want to do more with less. And really that's not really what anyone wants. We want to do better with less, right? Like you want to say, how do we prioritize and spend our time and effort on the best possible experiences so that we're spending our time and money where it counts the most, where it's going to have the most impact. And it's really beautiful to hear how you guys have been moving along those lines. Now, that being said, obviously you want to reduce friction. You want to make this as easy as possible for people. You want that journey to be smooth. But sometimes it's funny, the challenge in getting people to act on the product can be the product, right? So I know one example you mentioned was about Safe Play, which is just a super important program. It's a for the purpose of our listeners, it's a certification kind of program that USTA has in place to make sure that the people that are going to be working with, particularly the young ones in the USTA program, the young players and so forth, that those people who are going to be working with them are safe, that they're certified, that they know, they know how to deal with young people, and they don't have any inappropriate backgrounds, anything like that. Beautiful program. Great that you guys have that out there. And because that's so critically important, when you're trying to develop people to help them become players, or in the case of the example I'm thinking about, helping people become coaches and learn to be coaches, you say, well, that's great. We'd love to help you be a coach, but you need to be Safe Play certified. Now, on paper, that sounds great. Of course, that's a beautiful thing. But then when you're spending money and you're spending time as the USTA trying to say, hey, how do we recruit more coaches? How do we get people into our coaching program? How do we get them to sign up? And then it's like, there's a barrier now because like, wait a minute, like before you can move forward, you need to be Safe Play certified. Well, effectively that certification is a point of friction because that you're not just checking a box to say, yeah, now I'm certified, right? You have to go down a whole other process. So that all says to set up a question, how do you balance that, right? How do you balance the needs of programs like coaching or other programs where, you want to drive membership and you want to drive engagement with this need to say, but there's these other things that need to happen first?
You summarized that so well. So on the digital product side, from a UX standpoint, um, our job is to make journeys as frictionless as possible, as easy as possible. But as you just laid out, one of the business philosophies for, in particular, this last product that we just launched for USTA coaching is the philosophy that every coach that joins this program becomes a member of this program. USTA, as the national governing body, is going to invest and to make sure that these coaches are educated in safe play, or have gone through background checks. So, but also have the metric, a conversion metric of many membership. So it sounds like a oxymoron, where you're putting up a barrier before you get to that conversion, right? So traditional e-commerce, wisdom says make it as reduce the friction, make it as easy as possible, optimize impulse decisions, so that you get them in quick. And we're doing the exact opposite. We're asking coaches, hey, be a part of this program. But in order to be a part of this program, you got to do a 90-minute course, 90 minutes. Then we're going to take you through an intrusive background check. So there is a friction right there. And I think for us, what was for this kind of conundrum that they've given us, the business actually supported the philosophy. They believed in it. They believe that this is where friction can be purposeful and it serves critical value. So we kind of embrace that. Instead of hiding it, I think our marketing team and the business as a whole tried to make this as a positioning strategy, where you completely reframe the conversation. Instead of us treating it as a barrier, we're treating it as, this is something that as a professional coach, this will make you worthy to be hired, trustworthy for parents. We redesigned the onboarding of these journeys so that it feels more premium and that you are not only doing the right thing for the sport, but you're positioning yourself to be better at a higher level than other coaches in the industry. And also it means that we're not looking at just quantity, but we're looking at quality of coaches joining, which means they're committed. They're committed to the philosophy. They're committed to the vision, which I think in the long term, in terms of a success of a product, retention, right? So we know these coaches aren't going to be the impulse buyers that, hey, I'm just going to tweak this out and, spend my money and I'm not even going to be committed to it. But no, these guys have invested time. They've invested being a part of this program. And so we know that the retention, I'll tell you next year how retention goes. I'll actually measure it. But I think it's a strong feeling that retention is a higher metric, which will hold more value for us. And when we're measuring this as a successful product, we also feel that, some products you have to, from a digital perspective, you can't optimize it for impulse decisions. It's more about committed users who want to be there for the long term. So I think it kind of helps with, I've been calling it internally purposeful friction, where we're measuring quality of the coaches versus the number of memberships. You're measuring parent satisfaction, safety incident rates. Like obviously, as a national governing body, that's a huge thing for us to arm as many people with this information and this education. So that's a metric that I think helps us say that this was a success. So yes, what a conundrum for our UX team to try and position this as not a friction, not a barrier. Actually, you should be honored to be part of this program, be part of the army that is educated in safe play, et cetera. So tough one for sure.
Well, I love that phrase, purposeful friction, right? Because it really does describe it well. It makes me think, we had an episode of the pod before where we had a UX expert on there, and she talked about the importance of friction And I remember something she mentioned is that, sometimes friction's a good thing. And the example she gave, which I thought was really powerful and simple, is maybe when you're on an online experience and you're trying to delete something, and maybe it just pop up and it makes you say, okay, type in the word delete, right? That's friction, but you kind of want it there because they're trying to ensure that you're not doing this by accident, that this is a purposeful action, right? That you're trying to take. So you guys reframing it from being like a flaw, but really a feature of the overall product, and having this purposeful friction that really ends up adding value to the overall product. It's just so critically important, and I like how you guys did that. It makes me think, when we talk about the post-click experience here on the show, one of the big themes that always comes up is the importance for the business, for marketing, for IT, for product to all be in alignment, to all be in lockstep. And as you described, kind of the team kind of coming together and saying, hey, how do we reposition this? How do we talk about this? How do we frame this? That was a really powerful example of the importance of that kind of alignment. How have you found it as a leader in digital product? How important is it to you to make sure that you're staying aligned with the business, with marketing, with other technical teams to accomplish your purposes?
Yeah, no, it's a good point, and it can be difficult, because kind of every department brings a different perspective. So I think being aligned helps big time, but that there is always, unfortunately, there always is going to be a moment where certain teams are aligned. An example, still same example with coaching. Yes, everyone understood and accepted and valued the fact that we have to position this product, in the sense that you have to go through this barrier, this intentional friction before you actually join. But if you look at a finance team who's looking at the cost of funding this product, they want to get as many purchases as possible. So that is an example of, teams, separate departments, not being aligned on that journey. But I think it's always, in the hierarchy of stakeholders and who the business owner is. As long as you have a business owner that buys into the same philosophy, is leading the charge and making sure that, well, this is the priority, this is the philosophy, we're sticking with it, then I think you can have those conversations with the other departments who are part of the process, part of launching a product, to come on board. So, but everyone will have their different perspectives. So it's just interesting, how to keep that at the North Star as, this is our purpose. This is the goal. It's about long term, and, it's about retention. So you might easy, frictionless for year one. You might have much, much more increase in purchases, but in the long run, those aren't going to return the next year and the next. So you have to just keep reminding them of that.
As you kind of alluded to, that's a lot easier said than done a lot of times when you're kind of in the weeds and you're busy and you're trying to get things done and people are trying to meet goals, and each team has their own set of goals and tasks and things they need to do. You have your own set of goals and tasks and things you need to get checked off your list. So keeping that reminder top of mind is really critically important. It makes me think, as a leader, right, has a team leader on your side, as you start to get busy, as you start to get into those different sprints, how do you kind of keep the team engaged? How do you keep them motivated? How do you keep them kind of moving forward so that you are able to kind of get things done, but not get so kind of bogged down in it that you kind of get your spirit broken, right, by how busy you can get in trying to move forward with the digital product in a large organization?
I love that question, because I think no one's kind of, what's the word, crack the conundrum on this one. I think if you're in this business, if you're in digital development, you are on, I like to call it the never ending train. And it's like almost the never ending train to nowhere. And there's hardly any breaks to get off that train. It keeps going, especially if you're part of an agile, framework, that you are constantly doing many, many different things at many different times and all simultaneously. So while you're intaking requests, your design UX team is getting ready for the request they got 3 weeks ago. Then you are in refinement for something that's going out 4 weeks later, and then you're in testing for product that's ready to be shipped out. So this train with many, many cycles of many things happening, as you said, it can get relentless. I'm sure, as you know, with all the leaders you speak to, the burnout rate for product teams, digital teams, developers is very high because it is a very stressful, hard working job with very little breaks. So have I found the trick of trying to manage that? I don't know, but I will say from my 15 years in this position and being fortunate enough to have a team under me, I think people can handle intensity if they feel like their work has impact. Uh, I think, um, and part of that is to protect them and remind them of the impact and that their work is meaningful and that they're bringing value and what they're doing is important. Because I'm not gonna lie, because it's hard. And of course, you can take breaks and you can we're trying to implement the concept of no ship sprints where you're focusing on more planning, dedicate time for technical debt, research, learning, all those things. But the train still has to go, and there's still deadlines. So I feel like it comes with the gig. But if you feel like your work is making impact, um, and obviously if someone adds something to the plate, I think it's very important to take something off the plate, if possible. If possible, always might not always be possible, but there always should be a exchange of, hey, I want to get this in. Okay, well, if you want to get this thing, then you got to take that out. I think that has been helping, but again, reminding them of wins, making sure people feel like they're adding value and contributing to something greater and good helps with this nonstop train that you're kind of like hanging on for dear life sometimes.
I can understand and empathize with that for sure. I wonder, as you've gone through, you mentioned 15 years of experience, and you've probably come up with little tricks and frameworks to help. Like you mentioned, something comes on the plate, something needs to come off the plate. Trying to implement things like more time for learning, trying to make sure these no ship sprints that you're trying to get ahead and trying to stay in a planning mindset at least some of the time. Are in the 15 years, are there things that you kind of learned and picked up that you feel like, yeah, this has really worked well. Yeah, this was a mess. This was a waste of time. I'm not doing that anymore. Are there any kind of learnings like that you've picked up?
That's a great question. I think again, in you talk about in product work, our main job, right, is really managing our roadmap and making sure priorities are correct, and again, making sure the work is contributing to the priorities. So I really think that one of the biggest traps I found in product management is you being really busy building things that don't matter. I think that, so again, making sure, and sometimes you don't have a choice, right? Especially in an organization where priorities are set for you, but using your user testing to back up theories, to explain that, by doing this, this will make a difference, this will change, this will improve. And I think by what you said, alignment. Once you have alignment with the business and making sure that everyone's very clear on what the goals are and what the priorities are is number one best thing that could happen to any development digital team. Because if you're always questioning any requests that come in, if they don't lead up to the priorities, then you shouldn't do it. And that kind of makes saying no a little easier, because sometimes that can be hard in product world. You want to make everybody happy. So our team has kind of established what we call internally we call it page one goals, and these are the goals set by the organization. And if any requests come in, if they don't lead up to any of those goals, whether for USTA, we have a very amazing goal of 35 million tennis players by 2035. If a request comes in or an idea that even we want to implement, if it doesn't lead up to that goal, we're not going to do it. If we're not going to make tennis the most accessible sport, if it doesn't support that goal, we're not going to do it. So I think by just having really clear strategic goals and being able to always say what the work that we're doing leads up to that helps. That helps in prioritization. It helps with roadmap planning. Um, and also, I think also the concept I just mentioned to you earlier about, trying to do no ship sprints, but how do you take a no ship sprint into your own personal kind of um, work process is setting aside time where product work can be super busy. You're always constantly either writing requirements, you're testing. I think you have to be very purposeful to block time off to really review what's on the deck, what your North Star metrics are, reviewing feedback from users. So being very intentional about trying to block off that time where you can focus on those things because sometimes you can just get bogged down on the actual work. So that would be a discipline I would recommend. I'm not always good at it myself, but for listeners that I would recommend trying to do that. That would help, I think, tremendously.
With all things in our professional lives, many things easier said than done. But as you kind of mentioned, when you do kind of discipline yourself and you try to, really hard to say, okay, I'm going to prioritize this. This is what I'm going to do. This is the example I'm going to set for my team, or I'm going to empower my team to do. And you see the benefits of it, it gets you kind of amped up, right? And it kind of makes you look for the fix of kind of trying to do that again, because it's like, wow, that really worked well. How do we keep this up? How do we maintain this as best as possible? And as you mentioned, there's always these shifting priorities, right? And it's not always easy to keep those things kind of in the forefront and maintain those good routines and good habits. But little by little, you're adding kind of a little bit here, a little bit there, and it adds up, right? And it keeps things moving forward enough to keep everyone kind of sane and engaged and motivated as you move forward. As you do continue to move forward, as a digital product leader, obviously you've implemented a lot of these things. You tried them. You put them in place with yourself and with your team. In a perfect world, if you had, infinite resources for team members, for money, infinite time, what are those other things that you would love to be doing that maybe, it's not realistic to do them right now, but, it's kind of on your kind of maybe personal roadmap, so to speak, to say, here are the things I'd love to look at doing in the future that I think would be beneficial.
I think if you had, flexibility, I feel like it's kind of ratio of the kind of work you're doing. I guess, if you're able to focus maybe 60% on the strategic initiatives, but maybe 20% on experiments, because there's a ton of things that a team member would bring up or something that you think would make, really improve a conversion, but having the autonomy to maybe to experiment and not feel, any backlash if the experiment doesn't work. I think that would be really cool. And then, 10% on, unfortunately, I think a lot of teams fall into this trap, but not having the ability to spend capacity on technical debt. There's always a forward development, and that technical debt kind of adds up because you keep trying to hit these goals, do all the things that you need to do on behalf of the business, but there's always this backlog of technical debt that I think always keeps building. So 6 sprints of technical debt, would be amazing to knock those out and then almost feel like you're starting fresh with the new stuff. But we don't live in that world, so.
You've done such a great job over the years of kind of bringing in these elements over time, right? So it's likely never going to happen in one big shot, right? The question is obviously unrealistic. It's a perfect world, which we don't live in. But the ability to say, hey, how do we begin to kind of incorporate that maybe in a small way? And I think one of the things you really mentioned that's so important for leaders to hear is how you talk about just evangelizing the wins, right? Of saying like, hey, when we do these things, here are the positive benefits, so that those business leaders or our marketing leads and so forth can hear that. Because maybe, you say a term like technical debt, and they're like, I don't know what that is. Like, that doesn't matter to me, right? You say something like no ship sprint, and it's just like, well, if you're not shipping anything, then why do I care, right? So it's like, what's in it for me? And I think one of the things you mentioned that's just so important is helping them see what's in it for them by talking about those wins, evangelizing those wins, and helping them really to get involved in that. What are the kind of the things that you feel like has been important for you as you try to kind of build relationships across the teams and make sure that there's a good amicable relationship across the team and not acrimonious, which, things get stressful. It can get very easy to kind of get across teams to kind of get competitive or kind of get at people's throats. What do you do to kind of keep that positive, amicable spirit across the team?
Obviously, it starts number one is communication. I think, and also roles, be having a very clear understanding of what roles are. I think sometimes just, a lot friction can be added when people either not sure of who's doing what or feel that some people are doing things they shouldn't be doing, or a lovely term I hear a lot is not staying in your swim lane. So I think that if everyone understands their swim lane, and stay in it, but being open to feedback if it's not in your swim lane, I think is tremendous. And being open to communication. But I think if once everybody rallies around the goal and what is the most important, North Star. I love the concept of making sure every sprint has a goal. Sometimes we forget about that, but it's such a great Scrum concept, right? If everyone's aligned around the goal, we're all working towards it. We're communicating. We're all working as a team to get to that goal. It helps with that alignment. It helps with that kind of team camaraderie. For sure.
Let me leave you with this question, Alanna. So, the primary audience for our pod are marketing and business leaders, right? They're coming at from that perspective. And one of the reasons we love talking to people like yourself on the product side, people on the technical side, is because it gives those business and marketing leaders perspective that perhaps they don't have. So has, in your experience working with marketing leaders, working with business leaders, what are the kinds of things, or maybe what's the main thing, or just one very important thing that you'd love for them to know and understand about the product world that you think will really help them to increase their appreciation and respect for product and help them work better with product teams?
All right, what a great question. So I think, not to simplify it, but I think, there's a lack of understanding of what actually goes into product development, and understanding, no matter how simple you think the request is or how simple the ask is, it's actually extremely complicated. And that it also is time consuming. And that any good product or digital team, um, you know, there's a process, and it starts with the idea, then it starts with design and UX and journeys, trying to create frictionless journeys. It starts with, then going into, you know, documenting what we call expected behavior, then trying to work with developers on what that should look like. And then they go into coding, and then we go into testing. It's a long journey to get to from an idea to ship something out the door. And I think if more leaders from the business side or the marketing side really understand that process, that not how simple the ask is, no matter how simple the ask is, I should say, it's still going to be a complicated process to get there. So I think patience would be my number one thing. Patience and clear requirements would be my second thing. But no, it's an honor, I think, to be in products, to take an idea that someone has and to see it kind of be created and formulated and then come to life. Is a great kind of position to be in, and to be part of that journey to help spearhead that and be the voice of a business on the product side. I think, for them to understand that, I think a lot of product leaders find that as an honor to kind of represent the business side to the technical teams. They are your voice. So trust them. Trust that team that you've put in there.
That's really beautifully said. I think one of the things that I know I try as best as I can anyway to evangelize is, a business leader might say something, as you said, maybe sounds simple, like I want to do that. I want to do what I'm seeing on Amazon.com. and they have no idea of the 49 things that need to happen between where the organization is today to get to that, to get to that point, right? So to your point, understanding and respecting that, hey, as an expert, I understand that there are 49 things to get there. And it's not that the business leader has to understand all 49 and what's involved, because that's not their job, right? That's the job of the product person or the technical person. But it's saying, hey, look, I'm happy to help educate you, but at some point, you're going to have to trust that I know what I'm doing. And it does take 49 things to get there. And we're going to have to do this methodically if at the end you want this to work. And I think that message really came across loud and clear in the way that you articulated yourself there, and the importance of patience and just having a strong respect for the expertise that product managers and product development managers bring to the table when it comes to aligning that post-click experience. So that's so important. Alanna, thank you so much for your time today. We really appreciate it. We know how busy you are. We heard about it today. So we appreciate you buying out some time to talk to us and share your insights and experience with our audience.
Thank you. Thank you, Shamir, for having me. It was a pleasure talking to you, and hopefully I'll see you again.